This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
It is time to talk a little fantasy football. Yahoo Fantasy, Scott Pianowski, been doing it with us for many, many years. Many years. And you can follow my man Scotty Pianowski on Twitter at Scott_Pianowski. Let's bring him aboard. Scotty, good afternoon, my friend. How are you doing, sir?
I can't tell you, Big O, how great it is to hear your voice. It's been too long since we talked, and it means it must be football season. So let's get to it. I'm in a great mood.
I love it, my brother. I love it. So when you see Adrian Peterson getting released as a fantasy football player, you say what?
You say Gibson's ADP is going to skyrocket. I know he was used in an unusual way in college. He doesn't have a lot of experience as a runner under his belt, but a new coaching staff in Washington, it can't be any worse than the old one. I think he's a very interesting play, probably round 6, round 7. And when you look at that Washington team, remember, Haskins played a little bit better at the very end of the season, and the guy I want you to come out of your draft with is Terry McLaurin. This guy is, I think, the best of a very deep second-year receiver class. He was able to win last year with horrible stuff around him. If they can just improve it a little bit, I think he's going to be a superstar. You get him in the 4th round, you've done very well.
Yeah, I love McLaurin. He was I was a big fan of McLaurin coming out of college. I'm with you there. Cam Newton, how do you gauge that offense in New England, fantasy wise? What are you focusing in on in New England?
It's hard for me to say this because I grew up in New England, but I'm fading almost this entire offense. There are so many good quarterbacks in fantasy at any price point that you don't have to talk yourself into somebody you're not sure of. We know Cam Newton needs a running element to his game to be fantasy successful or even NFL successful. He's been hurt for a long time. He hardly played last year. I don't know how much time he's had to get acclimated to an offense. I know they still have Belichick and McDaniels, and that's great. But the skill players here, Edelman's into an age 34 season. They cut Sanu. That didn't work out at all. N'Keal Harry is basically rebooting his freshman year because he was hurt most of last year. So he's rebooting his rookie year, I should say. He's not in college anymore, of course. But other than James White, maybe in the 8th round, or Harry late as a lottery ticket, I think this is going to be a very ordinary Patriots team. And I don't think Newton is a great fit. It's the best they could do. They got him on a total team-friendly contract. He's getting almost no money. It's all incentive-based. And maybe they can make chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what. But I'm not drafting any Patriots proactively. I would take White at the right price. I would take Harry at the right price. I'm ignoring everybody else.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch. I don't think this whole Cam thing is going to work out. And, dude, when he came out and gave us that sell job 2 days ago on Cam, now I think it's almost like you're forcing a square peg in the round hole here. He hasn't been an accurate passer, and they've got midget receivers. That doesn't fly well for me. They're not receivers that get all kinds of separation. He's going to have to be deadly accurate, and that's not who he is. And Cam is a guy that probably...
Totally with you. Remember, Brady couldn't get out of New England fast enough. I mean, maybe he would have stayed if he felt wanted in New England, but he had trouble with those skill guys, and now they're all a year older. You know, Edelman and Brady ran how many thousand of reps together? They could complete each other's sentences. You don't get that chemistry overnight. And Cam is a guy who throws to wide open people. He needs to see it before he throws it. He's not an anticipation passer. So I think we're in mad agreement on this one. I'd stay away from the Patriots if you can.
Julius 305 is asking, with no preseason, Scott, do you see high scoring in the air or running game?
It's going to be dependent on the team. Here's my biggest takeaway about the unusual year we're in. And please, I hope everybody's being safe, being smart, listen to the people smarter than us, and let's try to get through this together. I think we all have that in the back of our minds. I've been trying to draft into continuity. I like teams that have the same quarterback. I like teams that have the same coordinator. I love that the Titans kept Arthur Smith, their offensive coordinator, and it makes me very bullish on Henry, very bullish on A.J. Brown, who they finally, remember, for 2 months, they didn't realize how good he was. He's not going to have last year's efficiency, but he'll make up for it because he'll gain 30 targets. I love that the Saints, it brought everybody back. Your quarterback, coordinator, coach, it's all the same. I want to go with continuity. I know, granted, when the team bottoms out like Washington, you hope maybe the new coaching staff will work out, but when in doubt, the teams where I already know what's in place and what works, that's where I've been investing. And again, I want to spotlight Tennessee because a lot of people don't know what to do in the first round after a couple running backs go off. Derrick Henry's been one of my most drafted players. I know he doesn't catch the ball much, although they're talking like he may get an uptick in receptions. He's actually been really explosive as a receiver. He just doesn't have a lot of technical skill in that area. But Tennessee runs with their head, runs with their behind. They run when the score is about even. And I think Henry's going to have another monster year. The offensive line is one of the 5 or 6 best in the league. I have a lot of Henry, a lot of A.J. Brown. I know they're a little bit of a throwback team in a league where most of the league wants to pass. They tend to favor the run. But I think Tennessee is going to be the best team in that division. And there's 2 guys you can get in your draft who I think they look really good right now.
All right, so let me stay in that area of the country. Joe Burrow, are you buying it? Is he even good enough to be a number 2 quarterback in fantasy? Because he's just certainly not going to be a number 1.
I'm not even sure he won't be a number. I love Joe Burrow. I could talk. We could have done this whole show on Joe Burrow. I love that I actually think it worked in his favor that he had the transfer and he had to sit out and he got stronger and he got more mature. Remember, he's older than Sam Darnold. And he comes into a Cincinnati team. They were 2-14 last year, but by their Pythagorean, they should have won 4.5 games. They really weren't that bad. They just had horrible quarterback play. Somehow Joe Mixon had a decent fantasy season despite all the garbage around him. I think Burrow's going to hit the ground running. I think he might end up being the best rookie quarterback we've ever seen. Statistically, you know, that's partially biased to how they play today. I mean, back in the 70s, a rookie quarterback wouldn't even play.
Right.
But I'm Burrow in a 2-quarterback league, a Superflex league, and the things around him. I want you to get Tyler Boyd on your team. If you can draft him in the 5th or 6th round, what a steal it is. I have some teams where Tyler Boyd's my 4th receiver. I think he might end up being a top 15, top 20 guy.
Wow.
All those slot throws. Remember how Burrow loved his slot receivers in college?
Yeah.
He loved Boyd. I think Boyd might catch 95 passes.
Wow. Okay. All right. Devin Singletary. How do we look at the running game in Buffalo when you've got a vulture at quarterback?
And a vulture behind him and Zach Moss.
That's right.
And by the way,
I'm a huge Zach Moss fan.
Yeah, that's what I want you to come away with here. Is I want you to target Zach Moss, and I don't want you to target Singletary because he's slight of build. He's got a fumbling problem that they were concerned about last year. They're concerned about it this summer. And when it's at the goal line, Josh Allen's running him in, or maybe Zach Moss is running him in. I could see Singletary having a 3 or 4 touchdown season. Those carries between the 20s, they sound nice, but they're kind of a waste of time. We want the money carries. We want those goal line carries. We want the third down work. I think Singletary at his ADP is a trap. I would avoid him completely. And I think Moss is one of those interesting players who maybe wouldn't be good enough to be a fantasy starter right away. But there's going to be an avalanche of interest in that guy. If he ever gets 50-50 work with Singletary or even becomes the preferred guy, you could have a league winner on your hands. I want you to try to draft Moss, and I really don't want you to take Singletary.
Yeah, Singletary, what, is a handcuff at best now? Is that the way you're kind of viewing him?
What is it? You'd have something to hang your hat on. He's not a full-time back. He's not a goal line back. He's not a heavy touch back. And he's got a security issue that the team is openly talking about. Here's a rule of thumb, by the way. We don't have exhibition games. So you news filters out of camp. And it's like, well, what do we pay attention to? What is true and what is fluff? Anything that's said positively, I take with a grain of salt. Maybe it's accurate. Maybe they're just trying to boost the player up. Maybe they want to trade the guy. Who knows? Anything negative they say on a player, they have no incentive to be negative on a player. When they tell you something negative, take that seriously. When Buffalo says, this kid's got a fumbling problem, he needs to figure it out, I take that seriously. I don't think you can draft Singletary. Just to take him off your sheet. I would have told you 2 weeks ago. I said this on Twitter and everybody got mad at me. I said, this is how you get ready for your draft. Get out your cheat sheet, cross off Leonard Fournette, go draft. And all these people got mad at me. Oh, he's going to catch all these passes. Blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, they couldn't give him away for a bag of kicking tees. And now he's in that big committee, it looks like, in Tampa. And I'm sure people are wondering what to do with Fournette. I mean, if you can get him to 7th or 8th round, fine, but I'm not going to proactively draft him at all. I think that running back situation is a big mess. I don't see an obvious winner there. I'm probably just going to avoid it.
The pizza guy's asking quarterback to start Roethlisberger or Drew Brees, PPR league, 4 points, 4 touchdowns, 6 points for rushing a touchdown.
I think it's very possible that Roethlisberger is ultimately going to be your most important quarterback. He has more upside. We've seen the Saints used to be one of those pass to set up the pass teams, but they've gotten more balance. Brees doesn't have the same volume. And then they've got the stupid Taysom Hill thing that they deal with. If you own Brees, will drive you crazy. So I think this guy who owns Roethlisberger and Brees may eventually settle on Roethlisberger as his main guy down the road. But given how much time Roethlisberger's missed, I'd just like to see it first. So let's play Brees week 1 and reevaluate. I like Roethlisberger as an upside. There's so many good quarterbacks. I love have a second quarterback that excites you, that you see an upside there. If you're in a league where you draft 2, or it makes sense in the shape of your league, have somebody where you see the upside. Roethlisberger certainly qualifies, but given how much time he's missed, let's have him play a game before we put him squarely in the circle of trust.
Where are you putting Lamar Jackson? With considering how important the running game is, well, he's a 1,000-yard runner. And he scores a lot of touchdowns, and he throws for some too. Are you expecting the same? Where do you put him?
He's my number 2 quarterback, but seasons like that, they Manning's best seasons, he hit regression. Brady's best seasons followed with regression. Mahomes, albeit partially because of injury, did not have the same year last year. I think the Ravens realized that they want Jackson to be a little bit more judicious with his running. I think maybe 700 yards is more what we're looking at, which would still be great. I mean, it's a cheat code when you have a quarterback who runs, and I get that. He's going to have to make more of his living as a passer this year. They went 14-2 last year, and they controlled games, and they were smashing teams in the second half, could do whatever they wanted, could run the clock out, and they have a stable of really good running backs. I think they're going to have to be in more competitive games this year, probably maybe 11-5 type of team. Still very good and one of the primary favorites for the Super Bowl. But because I think you can do well at any price point, if I take Mahomes, if I take Jackson, then I'm going to see somebody getting Wilson or Prescott a few rounds later. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's really good value. And then somebody takes Matt Ryan a few years later. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good value. And then somebody, ends up hitting on one of these guys who goes outside the top 10. Maybe Rodgers has a big year, or Roethlisberger has a big year. I said I was high on Burrow. I think the pieces are in place for Jared Goff to have a 4,500-yard season. I think Gardner Minshew is going to be a really fun, if sometimes dysfunctional player in Jacksonville. They can't run the ball at all. They're going to throw it all over the yard. There's so many right answers at quarterback. My second or third pick can't be a quarterback.
All right. The running situation there with Ingram, they drafted J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards is there. Dude, what do we do as fantasy players? Because it doesn't, and you've got a running quarterback. Yeah. So how do we view this? Because if you're in a dynasty league, is J.K. Dobbins that long-term guy? Because obviously Mark Ingram isn't. But for this season only in a regular draft, how do we view the Baltimore running game with so many backs?
Yeah, it's tricky. The gift and the curse of the running quarterback, it opens up lanes for the running game, but he gets a lot of the rushing production and the touchdowns himself. I'd be open-minded, say in the 12-team league, I'd be open-minded to Ingram around round 6. I still think he's going to be the somewhat featured guy, a 60-40, a 65-35. Maybe if Dobbins is really good right out of the box, it's 50-50. I don't think they're going to kick Ingram to the curb. He's a good player. And I think he's going to have a little bit of Frank Gore to him, where he'll be good in his 30s at a position where almost nobody is. It's so rare that we trust a guy when he gets around Ingram's age. I still think he's fine. Just don't draft him proactively. Just if the market gives you a reasonable round 6 kind of price, I'd be in on Ingram. Dobbins is one of those exciting guys. Maybe around round 8 in a traditional league, I'd look for Dobbins. The problem is it's just hard to imagine him getting the entire keys to the offense thrown to him. Even the guys behind them. I don't think Gus Edwards is a bad running back. He'd be probably a number 2 on most teams. Yeah. And he averaged like 5 yards a carry. He's a bowling ball. Nobody likes tackling that guy, especially at the end of games. So there's a lot of talent here. There's almost too much talent. I really like the offensive coordinator and Greg Roman. I'm a Mark Andrews guy. Hollywood Brown was hurt just about all last year, but he still had a pretty good season. Look how he flashed in that playoff game, by the way. They fell behind, and Hollywood Brown looked terrific. That's what we're probably going to see more of this year, is more of that. They'll be behind sometimes. I think Andrews might get 30 extra targets. He's a great 4th-round pick. So there's my shopping list. I'm not going to get Jackson. Not that he's not great, but quarterback is an easy solve. 4th or 5th round, you can get Andrews. I think that's a great buy. I would be open to Ingram at round 6. I'm not begging for it, but I'd be okay with it. Dobbins around round 8. There's just so many good players. They're going to have to share a little bit, but that gives you an idea of how I'm pricing them.
Scott Pianowski from Yahoo Fantasy joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at Scott_Pianowski. Herman is asking, is Pat Mahomes worth the number 1 overall pick in the draft?
There's just too much depth at quarterback. As much as he's wonderful, we have to divorce that the quarterback is the most important position in sports. The quarterback is probably the 4th most important position in fantasy football. We just have to accept that as the reality.
Pizza Guy's asking again now, Dalvin Cook. He says he took him in the first round, is he worthy of that pick? I would worry about Dalvin Cook with all the injuries.
Yeah, he's unhappy about his contract. He had injury history at Florida State. He's had injury history in the pros. That's why I'm taking Derrick Henry. That's where I might even pivot to Michael Thomas if Henry was gone. Cook is great when he's healthy, and Gary Kubiak is one of the most brilliant run designers. He studied at the feet of Shanahan and all that. So he knows how to get the running game cooking, and that's how Mike Zimmer wants to play. But I just am not confident. Every running back carries risk. I think every running back has to be projected probably for like 14 or 15 games anyway, just because of the position, how much you get hit. But Dalvin Cook is a little bit maybe he'll play most of the season, and that'd be great. If he's on the field, there's no questions with him. But I'm with you. The injury concerns have me shying away from him in the first round.
Tyler Lockett or Devontae Parker?
Lockett's done it twice, and he's tied to a better quarterback. By the way, I'm totally fine with Metcalf. If you'd rather have Metcalf than Lockett, they'll go in the same. In most drafts, they'll go like 2 or 3 picks within each other. We'd like to see them be more proactive with the pass. Usually they just kind of fart around for 3 quarters and then tell Russell go win the game. And Wilson does it more often than not. Never had a losing season as a pro, which I think is amazing. But Lockett is he's a round or 2 better than Parker. And Parker, the light went on for Parker last year. He had a great second half. And there is value in that Miami passing game. Gesicki starting to play some really good football at the final quarter of the season too. And now they get Williams back. And Fitzpatrick, he doesn't care. He's just going to thrust the belt on the field. So I do think there's value in that Miami passing game, but we're a lot safer when we're betting on Russell Wilson.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, my brother. How high do we take him? Because, now he's in the perfect situation.
Yes, and Andy Reid, he didn't just compare him to Brian Westbrook. He said he thinks he might be better than Westbrook, and that's a huge compliment. And Andy Reid isn't one to say things like that. I'm just worried that they might think, okay, this guy's valuable. We need him for the playoffs. We need him for 5 months. Let's not go crazy with the touches. I'm afraid that maybe Darrell Williams gets 5 to 8 touches a week. Maybe DeAndre Washington can catch 45 passes. I don't think they're just going to say, okay, here it is. 300 touches, go. I think it's not like the Kareem Hunt situation where he basically had everything to himself his rookie year in Kansas City. So I haven't drafted a lot of Helaire. He's a first-round pick. I guess around the turn, I might prefer Nick Chubb. If Kenyon Drake was certainly healthy, I'd be certainly considering him, although I get people who are nervous about Drake. He's never been a full-time player. By the way, Chase Edmonds is one of my favorite bench stashes. Whether you have Drake or not, I want you to get Chase Edmonds in those medium and deeper formats. I like Helaire. I just feel like as soon as they had the opt-out and the job really opened up for him, I feel like you have to draft him now at the high end of his range. And that's just on a player who's never taken an NFL snap. That makes me a little bit nervous.
So let me ask you, if Helaire and Dalvin Cook are available at the end of the first round in a 12-team league, where are you going?
I'd have to take Dalvin Cook. He's done it before.
Okay. All right.
I'd take Cook on the receiver. Let me tell you one other thing, too. Here's my favorite way to build a team this year. First round, find the running back that you really feel good about and get him. Get your horse, whoever it is. If you get the first pick, lucky you get McCaffrey. But I'm fine with Zeke. I'm fine with Kamara. I'm fine with Barkley. I said earlier I like Henry a lot. Get that wagon hitched up to your running back. Then I want you to pound receiver. I want you to have 3 receivers that you play every week that you're not even questioning. I want you to have Godwin or Allen Robinson. We talked about Lockett. I talked about how much I like Tyler Boyd. There's a bunch of them. Adam Thielen's going to get 165 targets. If you did want to take Adams or Thomas in the first round, then you pivot, you take a running back in the second round, that would be fine. I'm going to have 1 running back and 1 receiver after 2 rounds, and then I'm going to look at the 3rd round, 4th round, taking more receivers. I want to have better receivers than other people. People will have a mistaken identity with this receiver pool. They look and say, the 52nd receiver is not that bad. Oh, the 62nd receiver, I kind of like that guy. And that's fine. You like him for your bench. You like him during bye weeks. You like him if maybe he steps forward and becomes a better player, okay? But I want you to have DJ Chark's another receiver I'm drafting very proactively. I talked about McLaurin earlier. If you can get him in the 4th round, some leagues you might get him in the 5th round. I think that's an unbelievable value. I want you to roll out 3 receivers that are really stomping on people. I want you to have a running back that you sleep well, knowing he's your horse. And then you get cute with the second guy. Maybe it's Ingram. Maybe it's Dobbins. Maybe it's a pass catcher like James White or Tariq Cohen, or maybe something pops with one of your backups. You take a Madison and you take a Latavius Murray, you take an Edmonds, and they become starters. You work the waiver wire. don't worry about your second running back. Get that first one and then get a bunch of receivers, and then make sure you have all sorts of upside running backs in the middle and later parts of your draft. And you can really get quarterback and tight end just about any time.
Two-part question, and they kind of affect each other, and you'll understand when I ask it. Baker Mayfield, does he bounce back? Is he even a starter? Is he a good backup? And then, depending on what you think he does, how does that affect the running game? Because you've got Chubb and Kareem Hunt now. So how does that work out? What do you see happening there?
Well, at least Hugh Jackson's gone. At least Freddie Kitchens is gone. So if we can just get some rational coaching in here, some quality coaching with Stefanski and his crew, that's going to be good for Mayfield, although his head's going to be scrambled because he's got a new system, it feels like, every year. The problem with Mayfield is I can never get dialed into what frequency Odell Beckham is on. I mean, he's a mercurial guy. Sometimes it seems like he really wants to be great. Other times, I don't know where his head is at. And if you don't know where Beckham's at, they added a tight end in Hooper, who's a nice player, but he's not a special player, and who knows how acclimated he'll get. Jarvis Landry is generally a good fantasy value, but he's coming off a major injury. We didn't have any preseason to watch these guys run at all. So I'd like to see it first. If you want to take Mayfield as your upside backup, I talked about that earlier. I'm not against it. I'd rather have Roethlisberger. I think it may sound crazy. I think I'd rather have Joe Burrow. But yeah, as a backup, see where it goes. That's okay. I think Chubb is a guy who will be picked around the turn in most leagues, somewhere in that 10 to 13 range. He'll have to share with Hunt, but he'll probably be the 65-35 guy. The key thing with Chubb is they need to figure out how to score from short range, because their goal line offense was a joke last year, and Chubb would get a bunch of carries that were just stillborn in the backfield. They need to figure that out, because when you take a running back where he's going to go, you need 10 touchdowns, at least 8. And the way they were running the ball last year, that just wasn't happening. But I'm proactive on Chubb. I'm not going to elbow people out of the way for him, but I will take him. Hunt's an interesting guy, maybe around round 7. I'd like to see it with Mayfield. There are other upside tickets at quarterback that intrigue me more than him.
All right, one more before I let you go. What do you think N'Keal Harry will do this year?
Well, there's plausible upside. Edelman's in the slot, and he's 34. Sanu's not healthy anymore. They've already cut him. They need Harry to be something. Plus, they don't want to look stupid because they spent the first-round capital. I mean, when you're a first-round pick, you'll get more opportunities. If he was like an undrafted free agent, they might have just cut him after last year. But he was hurt. He did have a couple of splashy plays. He is a big-bodied receiver, and the best moments that Cam's had throwing downfield during his career, you think of like Kelvin Benjamin. He's had some success. Greg Olsen, of course, with the bigger-bodied receiver, so maybe there's a connection there. In a deeper league, not even in a shallow league, I just ignore Harry. In a medium and deeper league, he's one of those guys you throw on your bench, you see if anything pops, and then maybe you have to play him. I would like to draft a team where you'd never have to play a guy like Harry, and my bench would primarily be about the running back lottery tickets. But there's a time and a place. He was a first-round pick. Coaching is good. Maybe him and Newton will have some kind of rapport, because there's been a Newton connection with receivers who fit Harry's profile. So I see the upside as a stash and hope guy, but I wouldn't think we'd be even considering playing him until at least he had 1 or 2 good games.
All right, so Scotty, what are you guys working on there at Yahoo so our listeners can check you out, my brother?
Yeah, the biggest draft weekend. Get yourself over to Yahoo Sports, sign up for a team, run a commissioner team. We have all sorts of customizability and a very easy app to use, which has won all sorts of awards. I've done nothing to design this product, but I'm very happy to be out in front of it. Check me on Scott_Pianowski on Twitter. I just posted my season notebook where I just emptied out every player thought I have. We got a lot of them into this call today, but there's a bunch of other stuff. I talk about almost every team in the league. What I think of the Bears, what I think of the Cowboys, what do I think of the Steelers. So go over there. You'll get just a really substantial amount of information before you draft. And then just go be confident, man. Don't be afraid. Don't be the guy who has 2 feet on first base. You trust yourself, trust your gut. It's your team. You're the one who has to like it. And if you have any questions, follow me on Yahoo and follow me on Twitter, and we'll try to help you.
I got one more before I let you go, because it happens in every city, in every draft, every year that fantasy football has existed. We're a bunch of homers. We like our hometown team. We reach for our hometown players a little too soon in all these drafts. So break it down for us. What players would you draft, and where would you draft them from the Miami Dolphins?
I like Parker on the 5th. I like Jordan Howard as kind of an ugly 2-down grinder in the 8th. Maybe Breida as a lottery ticket in the 11th. Preston Williams, probably a 9th-round pick. Gesicki should be – it kind of depends on how your league values tight end, but I think he's one of the top 10. I'm willing to go around earlier on Gesicki with 7 or 8 guys. When somebody like Jared Cook gets drafted, maybe the next round you take Gesicki. That's kind of my rule of thumb there. So I'm proactive on him. Gesicki's probably the guy I'm most eager to draft. Although when I talked about running back early with that one guy and then waiting, Jordan Howard is like a really good like 3rd running back for a fantasy team. Nobody's going to be ooh-ah when you take him, and he's not going to catch a lot of passes, but he'll get, I don't know, 12 to 15 carries a week. That's a currency in fantasy. And with Fitzpatrick a quarterback, they were pretty good last year. I think were they 5-4 the last 9 games or something like that. They knocked New England out of the bye week. So there's some good stuff in this offense. It's not going to be a great offense, but I think it might be a useful one.
Follow him on Twitter. Always great information. Scott_Pianowski catches exceptional work there at Yahoo Fantasy. Scotty, you're a stud, my brother. Have a great draft, and let's kick ass this season.
Yeah, great talking to you. Good luck, everybody. Be safe, and draft like a champion today.
You got it, baby. You be good, Scotty. Thank you. There you go, Scott Pianowski, man. Always coming through for us. That was an awesome segment right there, dude. That was a fan-freaking-tastic